Resist, persist, occupy, rise up, expect us. Do these imperatives sound familiar? Yes, they are probably tattooed somewhere on my body, but that's another talk. These are the imperatives of a generation, the battle cries of 21st century social movements. They are also part of our currently trending hashtag culture. The words that you may or may not be able to make out from these photos behind me are from the Women's March in DC this January. These are the words that facilitate collective action and social change. When invoked alongside what writer Rebecca Solnit calls a politics of process, these words have created and continue to create unprecedented collective action, rendering visible what are typically unnoticed: cooperation and persistence. The Women's March in DC and its sister marches all over the world and their continued pervasive efforts are a perfect example of this fellowship. I'd like to shift emphasis from the aggregate force of these terms to be able to dissect what I think to be the most critical of all, because it's the single imperative that stands to facilitate all the rest. It's the one that catalyzes the remainder. Despite the context or goal, without persistence, there can be no rising up. Persistence sustains the efforts of so many in this era of popular resistance. These are efforts that may never bear fruit in our lifetime. But remember, persistence is often germination for belated blooming, meaning that simply demonstrating persistence becomes a trait that has legs. Don't underestimate where it may take you. So this is a picture of me when I was about 12 years old. So here we go. Around this time, I began taking gymnastics classes with a few of my girlfriends in the neighborhood. Just to clue you in, 12 years old is very old to begin taking gymnastics. Classes were once or twice a week. I got to hang out with my girlfriends and be silly. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I used to learn how to do all these daring moves. Finally getting to do a back walkover without crumbling to the ground was a feeling I will never forget. The aerial, back handspring, front semi off of the springboard all over the horse thing. Learning how to do these moves was exhilarating. Notice I said learning. And I have to stress this learning part because it is the act of learning, class after class, month after month, that has stayed with me all these years, 30 years later. It was the coach spotting me again and again, showing me how to do the moves, what I was doing wrong so I could fix it. I stress the learning part because, in all honesty, I don't think I ever knew how to do any of those moves. Let's put it this way. Some gymnastics kids are in full swing, pun intended, by age 2, semi-retired at 8, and basically injured by 12. So I was getting taller, I was growing in other ways, and I also had some lovely braces, a disastrous shag haircut, and to top it all off, a fancy perm. So now that we're clear how striking I was off the gym mat, let's get to the gym mat. My accomplishments on the gym mat. Okay, my biggest enemy, gravity. My back handsprings reminded me of this fact. But I just couldn't stop trying. Could not stop trying to get it right. I would regularly hold up all the other kids behind me who were waiting for their turn, telling the coach upon falling to the floor for the 9th time in 2 minutes, "Let me do it again, one more time, I'll get it, let me do it again." He often obliged me, but no matter the move, I always struggled with the execution. I requested to do it over and over again, one more time. So by the time our big gymnastics showcase came, I was as good as I was going to get. And it was going to be videotaped. I never saw myself doing gymnastics before, so in my mind, I was graceful, smooth, I was at my most flexible, my most confident, and I generally enjoyed performing. So everybody was proud, parents, coach, me. I was over the moon. So at the end of the show, the coach gave out awards. Predictably, I did not get an award that indicated I was a skilled gymnast, but I got an award that reflected my persistence. When I watched that VHS tape a little bit later, a week later or so, at my friend's house on her giant tube TV, I was dumbfounded. Not only was I none of the adjectives I just mentioned, graceful, skillful, I was a happy, sloppy, confident ball of chaos. Close your eyes and just imagine with me one thing. Imagine for a moment the human version of a heaping pile of adolescent mashed potatoes trying to execute a back handspring. Precisely, yeah. Fortunately for me, though, I was a kid hooked on persistence and not perfection. So persist I did. So maybe my talent was not recognized, but something else was. And this recognition has stuck with me all these years. Coach gave me the One More Time Award. Straight up, made up. I didn't care. I was being recognized for something that would stay with me very long after my pedestrian flipping capabilities were a thing of the past. I was being recognized for something that I didn't even need an able body to implement. Something that I never knew one could get recognized for. Yet the reinforcement that my endurance and my efforts were qualities that were valuable outside of the flipping was a complete game changer. I was recognized for my persistence, my continuing in a course of action in spite of difficulty, opposition, and malfunction. To persist is to understand that a current may be working against you, and you will advance on regardless. It's a survival skill also, and it's critical. However, it is important to remember that persistence is not intrinsic, and it needs to be fostered. Persistence can be modeled, it can be taught, and it should be inspired. Each of us can share in the responsibility of being persisters, per brothers, and per people. So when I intend to take this work of persisting beyond self-interest toward an area of cooperation, where despite all sorts of risks, cognitive, material, there is a return. There is always a return on your investment. This is because persistence is contagious. From the gym mat to the classroom, the small act of allowing me to persist and then recognizing me for this gave rise to a horrendous gymnast with an unflappable work ethic and a boatload of confidence. If you think about it, especially educators, we are always asking persistence of our students. We are requiring it, really. Show up. Yet we rarely spend time modeling this behavior or positively identifying it even. Good news, it's not too late. We can all start right now. When we ask an audience to bear with us during a presentation snafu, we're asking them to persist. When we get through the presentation, we have demonstrated persistence. When Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren kept reading that letter by Coretta Scott King during a Senate debate earlier this year, despite requests that she stop, she modeled persistence in action. My seeing potential in my students is paramount to my ability to persist. On university campuses, potential is bursting at the seams come August and January. But persistence takes a downturn come week 5 or 6. And I think that persistence can invoke a singular and collective spirit of something either that we want to attain or reclaim. You can get back to class anytime. This can be a goal, any goal, political, academic, health-related, or personal. But when persistence seems to fly in the face of expected outcomes, it's easy to question its worth. In her new book, The New Better Off, Courtney Martin interrogates our commonplace assumptions about how younger people are choosing to persist and to forge ahead. She finds that the old American dream may no longer be doing it for them. Her research reveals that Americans are actually no longer pining for their parents' or their grandparents' version of the American dream. Instead, persisting in their own ways on alternative paths to seek happiness and success through avenues that disturb the cliched dictate that home ownership, marriage, and a 9-to-5 job frame the quest for the American dream. That is, despite the notions that do persist about being well off, her findings are that young people are coalescing toward more of a community, finding value in and seeking worth from reinventing the often trite, upwardly mobile to-do list. To step back from my gymnast years and my current days in the classroom, let's circle back to those battle cries of the Republic. An expert on social movements, Dr. Michael White, recently suggested in his latest book, The End of Protest, that activism today is at a crossroads between innovation and irrelevance. Dr. White's tactics are meant to ensure that the next generation of activists doesn't suffer from generational amnesia, which he sees currently plaguing our culture. His message focuses not on the why, but on the how of persistence and on the how of protest. In other words, he offers us a manifesto that speaks in part to the starting place of persistence. And I suggest that if we can move this how into the classroom, to the office, the gym, the writing desk, wherever we need it, we will start seeing positive outcomes. Outcomes that may not result in MVP awards, but outcomes that can see us to the end of our goal, whatever that is. Might not be to fall down, or to go to class today, or to make it to the end of my shift at Build-A-Bear. Whatever it is, active persistence should get you there. I always tell my students that the semester is one long musical. And if I can't implement a musical theater analogy in my classes, I have failed. So, here it is. Day one, you come in, you are canning your way into class. Front and center in the chorus line, notebook, colored pens out, ready for your solo. And I tell them this is really great, awesome start. But remember, you need to make it to May or December so that you can your way out. I also tell them that my short-term memory, much better than my long-term memory. And for that reason alone, they have got to remember the last scene's choreography and not neglect their final wardrobe change, even if that number has the worst choreography and the most dreadful costumes. In learning communities, discomfort is paramount. And being willing to examine the sources of our discomfort is one of the ways that persistence can happen. So if persistence is the bullseye, space around it has got to contain connection, work, cooperation, empathy, even anger. These are the tools we need to hit that target. When handling them, be deliberate in using them. Be the most deliberate, heaping pile of adolescent mashed potatoes that has ever flipped. Thank you.